journalist for the BBC and also a member of the Anakbayan Melbourne group. And welcome to the stage. Thank you. Free Palestine!
Assalamu alaikum, comrades. I'd like to acknowledge Indigenous elders, past and present, and acknowledge Indigenous resistance to colonisation and imperialism, past and present, on this continent and many others. I'm an electrician, trade unionist, member of the ETU. In the last week, we've seen politicians and police trying to dissuade Palestinian actors from protesting. In New South Wales, protesters need to apply for a permit to hold a protest, and we just saw police try to outlaw the upcoming weekly Palestine rally. Fighting for the rights of others and not just similar to the laws restricting our right to fight for our own rights. We have no right to strike in Australia. We must apply for the Fair Work Commission, and permission will only be granted during specific periods. We see militant unionists defy these restrictions from time to time and often face repercussions. In the 60s, communist and union leader Clary O'Shea was jailed for defending the right to strike and refusing to pay penalties for unlawful industrial action. The building industry unions have found creative ways to take action and in recent months held several unsanctioned strikes. We do this in the face of legal and monetary repercussions because we understand our power as workers. By withholding our labour and halting production, we are hurting profits. The laws in this country are made to protect capitalists and imperialists. You know, as unionists, that just because politicians label something as illegal or designate groups of terrorists, it's not the delineating moral judgment that the media and pundits make it out to be. Apartheid in South Africa was legal, as it is legal now in occupied Palestine. Our PDC was quick to condemn Iran when it caused 0 civilian deaths and fulfilled its international humanitarian obligation to intervene to stop genocide. On the other hand, he maintains diplomatic ties with Israel, found guilty by international courts in the United Nations of committing horrific crimes against civilians. Many have spoken about the ALP's betrayal of the unions and of workers, but this is only the most recent and the most blatant. Insufficient action in the face of increasing cost of living and housing insecurity is a betrayal of the working class. Not using their political power to grant workers the right to strike is a betrayal of the working class. Speaking at the Business Council of Australia is a betrayal of the working class. But most importantly, kowtowing to the US and United States to continue supporting Israel both materially and in rhetoric is a betrayal of the working class. This is because the struggles of oppressed people worldwide are united. As not just a unionist, but also a member of Anakbayan, a militant Filipino youth organisation, I stand in solidarity with workers across the world. The perpetrator of all these issues is US imperialism, its puppets and its proxies. Australia allows the US to station military bases here in Australia, bases from which drones are guided to destroy lives and infrastructure in Palestine. These bases are on stolen Indigenous land, and US imperialism ensures the continued exploitation and oppression of the Filipino masses, just as it ensures the continued Israeli occupation of Palestine. Israeli-developed weapons and technology are tested on Palestinians and then used by police and oppressive governments worldwide. As a puppet of US imperialism, the Philippine government purchased $500 million worth of Israeli weaponry to meet ongoing human rights abuses in the Philippines. It is true that in the imperial core, we all benefit from imperialism and its subjugation of oppressed countries. But it is also true that we share a common struggle. Many of the living conditions we celebrate in Australia come at the expense of workers in Palestine, the Congo, the Philippines and beyond, as well as Indigenous people in Australia. But it's also the threat of moving production to countries with lower wages that acts as a wedge in the cogs of union activity in Australia. Workers live in the Philippines seeking better working conditions in Australia, only to be exploited by bosses and the visa system. It's not until we cease our economic exploitation of countries such as the Philippines and that workers in those countries throw off the shackles of imperialism that we are truly free to end our own system of economic exploitation. As Nelson Mandela, once a state-designated terrorist, said, "No one is free until we are all free." It can be so disheartening to go online and see the devastation happening in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and then see politicians and genocidal Zionists cheering along the mass murder of Arabs. But these voices are the loud minority. This isn't to say we don't have an issue in Australia of racism and Islamophobia, because we do. But the average person sees through the lies and knows what's happening is messed up. When I speak to my colleagues at work about the news, and these are, blue-collar, trade unionists, working-class people, they know that what Israel is parties, and even so-called progressives will time and again gaslight us into thinking we're insane and idealistic, to thinking that there's a solution outside of that. We've been told by politicians and right-wing pundits that this is a complex issue. A big part of the political disenfranchisement of the average Australian is that we're made to think we should leave discussions about politicians to the intellectuals and the politicians. Sorry, discussions about politics. We see literal 5-year-olds at protests with an understanding of this issue. You don't need a university education to understand what's happening in front of your eyes. It's not just about telling people what's happening, but it's about leaving our insular activist communities, teaching people how to harness their power as workers. You may not be in a heavily unionised industry or a militant union, but you likely have friends, family and neighbours who are. And being union members is not enough. We must take action in and with our unions. We've seen the betrayal of the global working class by the unions for longshoremen in the US, who disgustingly announced they'll continue transporting military cargo even through strike action. Unions are not above criticism. The working class is not above criticism. After all, it is the working class who act as the foot soldiers of imperialism, and their class betrayal is unforgivable. Injustice to one is an injustice to all. United we fight, divided we fall. One struggle, one fight. These are all common union slogans that we must actualise. While unions can take the lead on issues, they are nothing without their members and they cannot ignore our mandate. We must build class awareness and solidarity, agitate in our workplaces and communities, build strong and militant unions who are unafraid to stand with oppressed people worldwide. In the name of God, the most glorious, most merciful, glory to the martyrs and glory to the resistance!
Thank you so much.
Long live the Intifada!
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 Alright, we've got our refugee comrades coming over the hill.
Free the people, free the land!
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 Justice is our demand!
Justice is our demand!
Justice is our demand!
Justice is our demand!
Free the people, free the land!
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 Liberation we demand!
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 Liberation, liberation!
Liberation, liberation!
Liberation, liberation!
Liberation, liberation!
Palestine is a nation!
Palestine is our nation!
Palestine is a nation!
Palestine is our nation!
Palestine is a nation!
Palestine is our
Always will be Aboriginal land. And I want to pay my respects to elders past, present. My name is Dario. I'm the National Director of the United Workers Union. Our union is proud to be here tonight, standing side by side with people fighting for permanent visas for refugees and with people fighting for a free Palestine. For 82 days now, refugees have been encamped down the road on Bank Street, out the front of Department of Home Affairs, asking for justice and for dignity for themselves and for their families and for their community. For 82 days, they have braved the weather, they have braved racist Nazis coming to intimidate them, and they have braved the police, and they've stood together for justice. And their fight is a common fight for justice and dignity, and that's why our union is proud to support them every step of the way. Well, my family left war-torn Yugoslavia in the 90s, and we left as refugees. And during that time, I learned a lot of things. I learned about hate, I learned about injustice, and I learned about genocide. But I also learned about hope, and I learned about kindness, and I learned about fairness, and I learned about dignity and solidarity. Those are the values that bring us together tonight. Those are union values. They are also basic human values. They are the values that bring us together, and they are the values that we believe in, and they are the values that will help us win this fight. I'd like to introduce Samati, who was standing near me just a second ago, and I think she's nearby. Samati is a migration lawyer who has been helping refugees in limbo and other migrant workers in limbo, both within our union but also in the community for many, many years. Please welcome St. Marty.
It's a real honour to be with you again tonight on Wurundjeri country. It always was, it always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Sanmati. I'm a migrant. I'm a migration lawyer, and I'm a proud member of my union, the United Workers Union. For the past 3 months, I've been coming down to the encampments, and I heard a lot of stories. I heard the story about a man who, because he had no visa, was working on a roof. He was working in construction and he fell through the roof. And his boss drove him home, gave him a Panadol and told him to lie down and recover from his injuries.
Shame!
Because if he went to hospital, he could be detained. I've heard stories from mothers of children who were born here but who can't afford to go to school here. And what I've learned is that visas are designed to divide us, they're designed to keep us compliant, they're designed to keep us working, and they're designed to keep us thankful to our bosses and thankful to the government. We would all be on visas if the government and our bosses had their own way. We're here tonight as Unionists not just because solidarity, and not just because anti-racism are union values, but because all of the people that we see here today are our comrades, they're our friends, they're our co-workers, and what happens to them in their lives and what happens to them at work is union business. Yesterday, the people at the encampment were issued a notice and told to move on by this morning, and so I went down after work. So I went down after work to the encampment last night and I saw something else. I saw people at 10 o'clock at night offering me a cup of tea. I saw people knitting. I saw people reading the Sunday paper. I saw people talking about Palestine. And I saw that a piece of paper and a visa is never going to, it never has, and it's never going to define who is a member of our community. Who am I, and who gets to stay here. Governments don't decide that. Governments don't define who's part of our community. We do, and we have. We are winning this fight. And we will win it in the end. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you, refugees, for meeting up with us. That was a beautiful moment. I'm going to interrupt all your speakers. We're very important, but I'm going to do it because we've got a few from our Free Palestine rally that want to speak. So I'm going to introduce Jacob. Jacob is a member of the Socialist Alliance in Naarm, Melbourne. He is one of the elected national conveners that has been active in organising pro-Palestine protests, including the actions happening at Peter Khalil's office in Maryback. So please get involved in that. We've got to get him out. He doesn't represent the people of Maryback at all, and we've got to get him out. So thank you. Jacob, let's get you up here. All right, Brendan.
Thank you, everyone. So before I start, I want to acknowledge that we are gathering here on stolen land, and that this always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Now, what I think has been revealed in this past month is it's been shown that there's really no moral limit for these Western liberal democracies in what they are willing to accept in this genocide. It is unbelievable that we've seen all this outrage from all our Western liberal leaders about the Iranian missile strike that killed 0 civilians, as a previous speaker noted before. But of course they've said nothing about the massacre of thousands of Palestinians. In fact, the first thing to say is concerned. They're very concerned about the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza, but they won't name who's responsible for it. And what we have seen from our capitalist leaders is an almost callous display of racism and a complete disregard, devaluing of life. From the perspective of these leaders, it is clear that Arab and Palestinian lives do not matter. It shows their absolute utter lack of humanity. And just like what the refugees are facing with their encampments, we are seeing when it comes to our democratic right to protest and to even express any political perspective, the Albanese government can't help but show their callous racism and they're willing to repress, despite the fact they were just saying when we protested against the Land Forces Expo that the whole purpose of that Land Forces Expo is to defend our democratic rights and our right to protest. Federal and state governments are attempting to silence the peaceful protest movement against Israel's genocide in Palestine and Lebanon. They are using the pretext of a few Hezbollah flags to stigmatise and ban public opposition to Israeli terrorism. But also worse, while they're doing this, they're engaging in callous acts of racism. They're making threats to deport and persecute protests just for holding these flags. The fact that the Labor government even went as far as raising questions about their visas is absolutely appalling. That's not even disregarding the fact that many of those protesters probably have citizenship. But at the same time, I believe that no one should be treated differently in this country, regardless of their status in this colonial state. And I think this is very much a serious attack on civil liberties. It is the position of socialist lines that Hezbollah and Hamas are engaged in legitimate resistance against their oppressors. It is shameful that our government has designated them as terrorist organisations. What about the IDF, who have killed thousands more people? We call on them to be removed from the list of prescribed organisations. In fact, Hamas was only just recently added to a list of terrorist organisations. It was only done in 2018. Among this slaughter, the Albanese government and figures in the LP want to claim they are advocating for peace. But if they were serious about that, they would immediately stop arming Israel. They would cut all military exports, all military ties, including the sharing of information from the Pine Gap spy base. But I think one thing that has to be pointed out, there is a reason, despite the anger, the continuous protests for more than a year, there is a reason that these Western liberal capitalist leaders from the United States to Britain to Australia will not budge on these demands, and why we have to keep building the movement. Not sure if anyone here watched the vice presidential debate that happened in the United States. I didn't watch it. But one interesting thing that I did see reported and watched a clip of, so-called nice guy Tim Walz, Democrat candidate for the vice president position, he was really shockingly honest about why the United States and the West are so committed to Israel. He stated outright during the debate that the expansion of Israel and its proxies, I think that was like a misnomer, I think we were meant to say allies there, but he stated that it's an absolute necessity for the United States. That from the perspective of the United States and the West, the existence of Israel is necessary for protecting and maintaining their imperialist interests and control of the region. But on the other hand, they'll claim that what they're doing in the Middle East is about preserving democracy and so-called democratic values. They said this about the Iraq War, the invasion of Afghanistan, to Israel's genocide. All of this is apparently about preserving democracy. But what it is all about, it's about preserving their hegemony. And they're telling us that their economic interests and maintaining their control is worth more than the lives of thousands of Palestinians. How much more blood must be spilled in the Middle East to preserve so-called Western hegemony? And I think when I reflect as a socialist who's been involved since 2015, everything in this past year just revealed to me why the capitalist system must be overthrown. We can't afford to live in a society as this genocide goes on, where a small minority of a population with all the political and economic power allow the worst crimes of humanity to occur, while the rest of us just watches with horror. We have to build a movement of the oppressed and the working class who have nothing to gain from this sick system. We need to fight for a fair society where the majority have democratic control of our affairs and not these self-interested and barbaric capitalist leaders. Thank you. And we all need to show up in massive numbers for the Free Palestine protest this Sunday at 12 p.m. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine! Thank you, comrade. Soon, myself and everyone at the refugee encampment will walk back down to Birch Street. We're going to walk down Collins Street back the way we came. It was a beautiful moment walking over that Collins Street hill and coming down as the rain was starting and the sun was going down and meeting the rest of our comrades here tonight. So I want to thank everyone for that beautiful moment. And I also want to acknowledge some people here supporting Free Papua. Thank you, comrades. The fight for justice and dignity for people that have been on insecure visas for 12 years is a fight that can end at any time. It is not difficult for our government to act and give people security in their lives. No one should have to wait this long for basic security. Am I right? Yeah! There's a chant that we've been chanting, Jade, I think maybe you'll help us start this. And it's pretty simple, guys. When we say 12 years, you say too long. Because some people have been waiting for a permanent visa now for 12 years. And that is way too long. And the government needs to fix this, and they can very quickly and very easily.
Alright, before we get into it, as we start the chant, we're going to march up the Collins Street. March up the drive. So when I say 12 years, I'll say 2 long. 12 years!